Welcome to another episode of the BYU Tech Transfer Podcast. I'm Bennett Mortensen. I'm here with Dave Brown today, and we're talking about a new piece of software out of BYU. And just to hype it up a little bit, it's AI software. We have a minimum viable product, right? And it's been used at a BYU basketball game. So Dave, tell us a little bit more about this technology.
Yeah, we used it this last Saturday at the TCU game, which will be a big comeback win for BYU.
Nice.
And the software performed perfectly. It was with experimental software, you think, will this crash? Will something go wrong? But nothing like that. It was slick and great. And what it does is it measures the crowd noise, the audio, and based on that, it extracts information about the engagement of the crowd. So it has a chart. If you look at a screenshot, the top chart is showing decibels, so you see the volume going on in the arena, and then the bottom part is showing crowd engagement. And they're two different things. It can be very loud. Someone could be on the speaker talking really loud, but actually crowd engagement's low. Or it could be pretty quiet, but the crowd's really into this and crowd engagement would be high. And so you can think of a lot of ways that could be valuable, but it was just great to see the software performing so well.
And then this is AI software. So what about this makes it AI? I know that's a big buzzword right now, but this truly is AI software.
Yeah, it actually is a large language model. And so it's learned and created its own rules for how to differentiate different things in the crowd noise. And it's been fed really good acoustic science. Our professors have been working on this for probably about 7 years, and they've collected data from all kinds of different environments, and the software has learned how to recognize crowd engagement. And if a lot of people have asked me, well, how does it do it? It's like, I have no idea. I'm not sure if that's even knowable. It's artificial intelligence
that's
doing
part
it.
of the AI.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, and there's a lot of kind of speech recognition software out there. Now, this is something different than just speech recognition, correct?
Yeah, so speech recognition, you have so many options. There's Dragon Naturally Speaking, has been around for a long time. You have Siri, Alexa, something on your phone right now is speech recognition for sure. But all of those software applications try to get rid of crowd noise so they can just focus on the voice of the speaker they're trying to interpret.
Right.
And this is pretty much the opposite. So an insight from our professors is, and this is Mark Transtrom and Kent Gee and their students, the insight is, no, there's meaning in the crowd noise. All that stuff the other software is screening out, we want to use. So from a patenting perspective, it's really nice that it's a non-crowded space.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay. And then with this, I believe there is a hardware component to it, but it's not overly expensive. What is the cost of the hardware associated with it?
Yeah, and the hardware is not custom.
Okay.
At the games, we've been using a $1,500 microphone on a pole,
Right.
and then next to a laptop. You wouldn't need that. You could have a whole setup. I think they said for under $1,000, you could have everything you needed.
Okay.
Our setup costs a few $1,000s.
Yeah, and it's all off-the-shelf stuff, right? So it's nothing custom, right? You could literally buy all your components, use this software, and you're up and ready to go.
Yeah, the startup company that eventually will commercialize this and sell it will be selling software, and I assume everyone will want to use their own hardware.
Right, exactly. Okay. What kind of competition is there in the space? What do you see?
Yeah, as far as we know, there's zero competition for this actual measure. There is, I saw some charts, there's some growth in data analytics in sports arenas. Like the quantitative side of analyzing arenas is really growing and projected to grow over the next few years. This is a little piece of it, though, that it looks like no one else has done.
Okay. So the market is growing, and you're filling a market need that nobody else has really stepped into at this point, if I understood that.
Yeah, we expect a startup company to form and commercialize this technology, and I'll just say there are some obvious companies that would be acquirers for that sort of company.
Okay. Any companies off the top of your head that you'd be like, hey, this would be a great acquirer of this tech?
Oh, sure, Microsoft.
Microsoft.
Some big software companies that are making plays for sports analytics.
Okay, so if I was an entrepreneur, that could be my path to success, right? I want to take this technology, spin it up, get a good client base, and then seek to get acquired by one of these bigger players in the field.
Yeah, I would think you would want to sell the software to every arena in the country. And as soon as you have a large enough user base, then companies like this would come looking for you.
Okay, great. And so starting out, as a startup, who would be your ideal entrepreneur or licensee, I guess?
Yeah, we're always open to an entrepreneur. We have one of our technical founders here is willing to be a part of the company.
Okay,
that's
great.
huge.
Yeah.
And it's someone who's really good to work with as well. So that's great. There's some grad students who could be a part. So the technical part I'm not worried about at all. What I want is a good business entrepreneur who will take this and see the sales opportunity. Like you said, it's an MVP, minimum viable product exists already, and it's great. like anyone, you could buy this and use this in a lot of different ways right now.
Right.
So we want someone who's going to be good at marketing, reaching out to arenas and making those sorts of
And that really opens up who could take the technology, right? Because with some of our tech, it's a little bit technical and there still needs to be some development, but it sounds like this one is, packaged up and ready to go.
Yeah, so BYU students are really good at sales. A lot of people have done like summer sales jobs. Many people have served missions and so are used to talking to people. And so a really energetic group of students, if they had proper financial backing, could do it.
Okay, great. So let's say I'm a student at BYU, right, or an entrepreneur who's listening to this podcast. What would be the steps that I would need to go through to learn more about the technology and potentially set up a license for it?
Okay, so I assume you will have watched this, maybe done a little online research. So the next step would be to talk to me, and if everything checked out, I would introduce you to the professor so you could ask technical questions. There aren't a lot of technical questions to ask. Like, we've kind of covered the bases, honestly. But you might ask, where's the software going to go next? And we can talk about that. But once you're comfortable with the product, then you license it from BYU, and you already have the software that you can start selling to people. If you want to develop it more, great. But from then on, it's a marketing and branding business.
Yeah, fantastic. And as far as the business structure, do you think this could be more of a service that you provide, or do you think you'd be selling the software to large arenas?
Yeah, I'm open to input on that.
Okay.
But so one thing is, well, and who do you sell it to, too?
Right.
You could sell it to arenas, and then every time a band visits or a sports team or something, they can offer them as an add-on, buy this data about your performance, and it's real time, like you can look at it while you're performing. That'd be great. Or so arenas are a possible application. I know the head of the Marriott Center was excited about it.
Nice.
But also you could provide software as a service. You could have people subscribe to it. Maybe if maybe a comedian would want to subscribe to this,
Right.
so that I can see what my audience actually thinks of these different jokes.
That'd be a fantastic use for it, right? Because as a comedian, it really is crowd engagement, right? And if you could have hard data of which jokes are hitting and which ones are missing, you'd think you'd be able to leverage that into, increased viewership or increased sales or whatever it is that you're trying to measure success with. That's fantastic.
Or a music group too. Like I saw an interview with 21 Pilots one time, and they were talking about how when they were starting out, they watched every YouTube concert performance they could, because they were watching other bands to see what worked well with the audience, so they could imitate those things.
Yeah.
And they do a great show also.
Yes.
But here, if you could actually quantify, this part of the show works and this part doesn't, that would be great. At the basketball game, they have different advertisements, different promotions they do on the floor. And I won't say which is which in the episode, but there were a couple where engagement was quite low.
Yes.
And I think if the advertisers knew that, they would adjust something about what they're doing. There was one, well, I'll say the obvious winner. They had one where it was toddlers racing cars across the floor.
Yeah.
The audience was super engaged. That was a great promotion, whoever was doing that.
Gotcha. And maybe to circle back to kind of the technology, how it works a little bit more, but it's more than just crowd noise, right? It's not just how loud is it, right? It's more, are they actually engaged with what's going on at this time?
It's actual engagement. So what they're doing is they're seeing if the audience is reacting in a coordinated way. Like if everyone's doing the same thing, the crowd is really into this game.
Right.
And it's judging it based solely on the sound. It was interesting to watch. If something happens that's great, if BYU scores, the crowd's very engaged, and you can see that spike up and stay up probably for a little while and then gradually drift down. If there's a bad call, you can see it dive down. And sometimes when something negative happens, especially if it's a bad call by a ref or something the fans don't like, it'll kind of bounce back and forth in the 40 to 80 range.
Okay.
And what that is the crowd's not quite unified. They're all grumbling in different ways.
Right.
And so that's why
Everybody's
that's
upset, but not upset about the exact same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And there are future things they'll do. So this is sentiment analysis 101. We think engagement is the best thing to measure right now.
Right.
But they can also very easily, and they're working on it, split it up so you would have positive engagement and negative engagement. So you can see, okay, the crowd's very angry right now, or they're very happy, and that could be useful.
Okay, great. And so I'm thinking, putting myself in maybe the shoes of, maybe I'm one of the coordinators for events at an event center, right? And I really want to put on the best possible show, right? And bring in advertisers or, events, halftime shows, whatever it is, to really make this the best event possible. This could be good, hard data that I could use to analyze, over the year, and then start out the next year with, hey, I know exactly what hits, exactly what misses, and I'm going to put together the best show possible for this arena with the tools that I have. Could that be a potential use for it? I'm thinking, yeah.
We think fan engagement is one of the best applications because, and the reason is, many people in fan engagement are quants. They're already analytical people who are analyzing data.
Yeah.
They just don't have access to this data.
Yes.
And if they did, they would immediately know what to do with it.
Okay.
And so they would optimize floor shows. For them and also for outside advertisers, I think it'd be nice to be able to do A/B testing of ads or performances. Like, you can make tiny tweaks to things that are going on the floor and see what's better. Just like if you run an ad on Google Ads or something and you change the font color or the size or something like that, you could do that sort of fine tuning.
Yeah, and that's such a useful tool for websites. And so that'd be fantastic to have it for ad spaces in, physical arenas.
Yeah, we know how to be amazing with digital ads.
Yeah.
So this kind of makes the real life arena experience a digital ad, or
That's
optimizable in the same way.
Fantastic. With software coming into tech transfer, I know it comes in at kind of different levels of readiness. Where would you say this one is on the scale, from like maybe a 1 being barely put together code that might be functional, to maybe a 10 of, you could launch this tomorrow if you really wanted to?
Yeah, so you're right. We do get things all over the place. Sometimes we get just a software idea. It hasn't been created at all, no code.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be some development. Often what we have is university code where some students have put it together and then a different group of students came and added stuff on. And so it needs to be rewritten completely by a company. But to answer your question, this would be 9.9, maybe 10. Like it's usable right now. And like I say, it's stable software. It's sometimes you worry with software, well, what if it's handling like private information or their HIPAA regulations or something like that? That's not the case here. This is public information in an arena that you can use. And so I don't see a need to change the software right now. The students pulled all-nighters for a week to have it ready for the game, and they did great, and it's really good. So I believe you could begin selling it immediately.
Okay. And that honestly can't be understated, because a lot of our technologies, there's still some additional R&D that needs to be done. And from an entrepreneurial perspective, there's nothing wrong with that, right? But the sooner that you can get that product to market, the more you're truly a commodities company versus a R&D company, right? A lot of our startups start as R&D, whereas this one doesn't necessarily have to.
Totally true. And there's to be less of a need to raise money probably, even though it's an AI technology, you could probably pull that off. And the other thing is, with software that's already ready like this, we could just list it online. We could sell it. Like BYU could sell it directly. That's not what we want to do. We like launching companies. So we want someone to take it and create a company around it, employ people, get it spread as widely as possible.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. And then one other use case that I was thinking of is, what about public speakers, right? So maybe a Tony Robbins, or have we had anybody use it in the Marriott Center, for giving their maybe, public speeches?
Well, I asked about that. The thing is, public speeches in the Marriott Center tend to be very reverent. They're devotionals, people are quiet, and so there's just not enough crowd noise. If people were yelling more, we could do it.
Right.
But no, for Tony Robbins, though, that's perfect. For motivational speakers, people who want people up on their feet and reacting, anytime you're trying to get the audience to be vocally engaged with you, this is going to be a useful tool.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure if you ask anyone, ask Tony Robbins or anyone, any motivational speaker, like what hits in your talk, like what are the good parts,
right?
And they would have opinions, but they're just opinions.
Yes.
In the moment, it is so hard to be objective about ourselves, and this data isn't going to be subject to your personal self-image or something. It'll just tell you the real facts.
Yeah. And I think for any of those motivational speakers that I've listened to a bunch of them, over time, podcast, YouTube, things like that, but like they kind of hone in their speech, but it takes them decades to do it, right? You'll watch Tony Robbins from 10 years ago, and he'll be giving the same tips and tricks and points in the same order with the same cadence, and it takes him a long time to develop that. So I feel like this could be a tool where you could cut out some of that time, right? Where it doesn't take you 20 years to become this great motivational speaker. It takes you 2, right? Or 1 or 6 months, because now you're using data instead of, trial and error over the course of your career.
Yeah, and in addition to engagement, it would be interesting to give a speech, and there might be something you say that kind of is a turnoff for your crowd somehow that you don't know. Like you mentioned some political issue or something that's sensitive, and then suddenly engagement dives a little bit. It would be nice to know that.
Yeah, so you could cut that out, right? Or add something else in place of it that might hit a little bit stronger. All right, so one of the missions of BYU is to use our technologies to make the world a better place. Do you see this as fitting into that mission statement? And if so, how? What do you think?
Yeah, so the consumer-facing technologies or things that are around entertainment like this, sometimes you feel like, oh, does that change the world or not? Anything that improves efficiency is improving people's lives. And if you can more effectively provide people, like we believe in entertainment, like if you go to an event, you're there to be entertained. If it can be 5% better, that's good. Like that's solving problems for people and is making the world a better place. Yeah. Will there be some humanitarian application for this? I don't know. It could also be used to spot, and this is not the main commercial purpose probably, but one idea we've had is you could monitor crowds in a political situation and know when a riot's about to break out or something like that. So there could be those humanitarian issues, not something we've approached so far.
Okay, but I think that's the great thing about putting it out there, specifically on the podcast, is that we have like we usually do, right? Like I had with the cupcake containers, that
Yeah.
you kind of get zoned in or focused on a particular use case, and then you spend all your energy on that. But somebody listening may have a brilliant idea for this technology that we just haven't considered, and be able to spin it off and improve the world in a way that we haven't even really talked about.
Yeah, it's March Madness. As soon as I heard basketball, I forgot everything else.
Right,
It's
right.
just
You
been
get
basketball
really
arenas for me.
laser-focused, yeah.
But that is a pretty good application.
Nice. So another thought with this technology is I think there's a pretty obvious direct use case for monetization, right? You're governing the crowd, that data is valuable. But is there any way that you could use that data for additional monetization for either the arena, maybe you're driving food sales or concessions, something like that?
Yeah, concessions actually make a lot of sense, and it could be merchandise too.
Mm-hmm.
But in our research, we found that the number one driver of consumer purchases at an event is mood. So
Okay.
if you can judge the mood, or you can say, well, here's a song that makes the crowd happy, and
Right.
happy people buy more hot dogs or something, you could orchestrate that a little bit. And with an arena, why not? Like drive a little sales, or maybe make the timing when people buy things more predictable.
Yeah. And I'm thinking of the sales of this technology, right? If you could go to an arena owner and say, hey, with this data, you can more or less, guide the crowd's mood towards those moods that increase sales by X percent, right? To me, it'd be a no-brainer, right? If I could increase concession sales by 10% and this is going to cost me X number of dollars, quick little bit of math, yeah, that's definitely worth it for me.
Well, and arena owners are going to have some original ideas too.
Right.
Because maybe if you play a certain song, people exit the stadium faster. Maybe it's valuable. Maybe if you can empty the thing like
Right.
20 minutes faster, you
Turnover
save some labor time or
right?
something. I don't
yeah.
know.
No, that's great. Love it. Okay. And what future uses or maybe advances in the technology do you see on the horizon?
Well, in terms of uses, there are a couple other uses that have come to mind.
Yeah.
I'm interested in your feedback.
Okay.
So one is our inventors pointed out, what if you're an agent for an athlete, for example?
Mm-hmm.
You could show when my guy is on the floor, fans like that. And you could have hard data to say, look, the team's winning, that's great, but what gets the fans excited is my clients.
Right. When he comes out, everybody's engaged and cheering for him, right?
Yeah.
It's all positive engagement. Yeah.
And it wouldn't even have to be professional because of NIL. College athletes can be paid.
Right.
If you were one of them, wouldn't you want that data? So you could say, look, you
Absolutely.
should advertise with me. Here's why. If I wear the shoes, people care.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of an interesting application. And then one other application that might be zany. I don't know if this would work or not. But people, if you ask athletes, like I just saw a clip with Jimmer Fredette the other day when he was talking about this game, and he was talking about the effect of the fans, because at this game I'm talking about, towards the end, the fans were going nuts, and that helps the team. If you believe that's true, then teams could orchestrate fan engagement.
Right.
They could know that when we play this song,
Yes.
the
So
fans
we
get
know
behind us.
This song and this player and all of these different metrics are what really increases engagement. So we need that push for the end, right? So let's make sure all those things lines up.
Yeah, we're already doing Moneyball type analytics to make
Right.
games work. Do you think they're willing to add one more tool to the arsenal? Probably.
Probably.
So that'd be
That's
interesting.
fantastic.
But there's so many other applications, and as always, what's fun talking about these technologies is people are going to listen to it and come up with some application we haven't thought of.
Yeah.
There's a lot of possibility.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking more about the business structure. And I'm just thinking yes, you could sell it to arenas. I think there's a huge potential there, right? A huge
Yeah.
market there as well,
Yeah.
people who have money to spend. But going down to the individual granular level, right?
Yeah.
You could collect the data and then find those athletes who are willing to pay
Yes.
for an analysis of that data, right? And give them results of, okay, for your personal brand, right? When you come on the floor
Yeah.
and when you did this one thing, people loved it, right?
Yeah.
The crowd went nuts, and more than just noise, right? But engagement with you on the floor. So keep doing that, and then you can circle back and renegotiate your contract in a year for more money, right? With data to support that you are one of the reasons that the crowd is engaged with, whatever it is that you're doing. Just thinking of
Yeah.
one particular situation.
No, that's super interesting. I think that's such a great point. And what if you're already at the peak? What if you're an NBA star and you already have endorsements,
Right.
and then you do something in public that's embarrassing or controversial?
Mm-hmm.
You're like, what is the effect? Well, maybe you can watch engagement in games afterwards and see if the fans still like you quite
Yeah,
as much.
that's true. So it could be a hedge, right, against your
Yeah.
marketability as a spokesperson, right?
Right.
So you could say, hey, yeah, we maybe tweeted something, right, and it went poorly, but it hasn't
Yeah.
affected crowd engagement, right? People still love what I'm doing, still watch the sports, so you shouldn't cancel me or cancel my deal, right?
Yeah. Also, there's no limit on arena size.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking huge arenas because obviously with the business, go where the larger dollars are. But the software, the marginal cost of providing software is about zero.
Mm-hmm.
So why not do this in high school auditoriums also?
Right.
When I went to a high school basketball game recently, and it was a great game, and I was surprised the place wasn't packed. It was kind of empty.
Yeah.
Like maybe you could make those more engaging and more people would come.
Yeah, I think so, right? And for relatively low cost since it is software, right?
Right.
Which is great.
Exactly.
And I'm thinking like for big events, I keep going to like really big events. I think that's where everybody's drawn to. But I'm thinking the Super Bowl, like they've had halftime shows in years past that missed, right? Like they were not engaging, people were not engaged. And so that could be one more hedge for them where they could test out some of these shows. You know, who's performing, what does their show look like before we bring it to the Super Bowl and figure out which ones are really going to drive that crowd engagement.
Right, and you could also compare between different events. You could say which game this season had the highest engagement.
Right.
Or if you know your demographic, if you know who attends the Super Bowl and they also attend other events, you can watch what hits at that other event and then use it at your event.
Right.
One other thing we haven't talked about is political rallies. As a politician, how could you not use this? Like if you're holding a big campaign event, don't you want to know like what lines actually get engagement? You're up there and so many people are yelling, maybe it's hard to figure out. This would tell you.
Yeah, and the specifics of it would be huge, right? Where you could say the same thing but say it different ways and judge the crowd engagement with each variation of it.
Right.
Right, and really hone in your stump speech for what gives me the most engagement, right? What's the most bang for my buck when I'm saying these, political statements, whatever it is.
Yeah, and that's a heavily money-backed, very analytical already field. So why wouldn't they do this?
Okay. No, this all sounds great. Are there any limitations that you're aware of with the technology?
Well, let's see. It's limited to audio. So some people have said, well, could you combine it with video? It's like, that'd be different because a crowd doesn't look like a person looks. Like, I think that would be a hard thing to do.
And to me, that's almost a selling factor, right?
Yeah,
that it's limited to audio, so you don't need the video, right? Which is, to me, would be huge. Yeah,
the simplicity is actually a selling point. And the fact that the microphone we've been using is a normal person microphone. It's not big or anything.
Right.
Like you could actually, it wouldn't have to be the arena. You as an attendee, if you had a reason to, could go in there with a normal looking microphone and be doing the same analysis on your own.
Right.
So I don't know why you would do that, but someone could.
Yeah, but I think that's important to know, right?
Yeah.
Where obviously I think you could probably optimize the audio if you had it, in a particular position in the stadium, but even knowing that you could just go in there and get good, reliable data, just, having that microphone on yourself.
Yeah, we do have some higher end microphones in the Marriott Center that they've used for acoustic studies, but that's not what we're doing here. This is meant to be a product that's easy for people to use.
Do you think it could ever get to the point where we talked about stand-up comedians, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you have your phone in your pocket, right? So you're recording yourself speak, right? And you're getting the crowd feedback, and then having maybe an app that does the analysis for you, right? And like breaks it up into, I don't know, maybe I'm thinking long-term, but I think that would be huge for like independent artists. An app that you could download and pay for that could give you real-time feedback on what you're doing well and what needs to be improved in your act.
Yeah, that actually seems inevitable to me.
Right.
Like right now, it runs on a laptop, like a normal person laptop, nothing fancy. And so we were talking about this, and they said like you could put it on a smartphone. Of course, we just haven't yet. And so at that point, you could be on stage doing your jokes or whatever. We were worried at the game that if someone was too close to the microphone, we were kind of on a press table so that we wouldn't be close to people.
Right.
Like if someone's right next to you cheering, is that going to mess things up? Because you can cheer and you can see the decibels pick it up. It won't pick it up as crowd engagement. So we were trying not to be too close to people. So that's my one thing is if you had it on your smartphone just in your pocket, maybe you'd be hearing too much of you to filter out the other music or the other sounds. But I think that's probably just an LLM issue. Like probably it would figure out how to do that.
Right. And that might be a current limitation, right? If you want to call it that, but something that would be easily overcome with a little bit of development.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great opportunity for it is that right now it's ready out the box, right, for implementation in arenas, big events, right, anywhere that it works. But then there's additional development that could go into it to make it maybe tailored for specific experiences that you want to improve.
Yeah. And we'll see what's useful. Like engagement seems obviously valuable. Positive and negative engagement seems valuable, but what other sentiment could you get from the crowd that would be useful? There are a lot of possibilities. This is very much like if you've ever seen sentiment analysis of like social media posts and things like this, same sort of idea. Okay,
great. Okay, well, and maybe one more time for our listeners. Let's say I'm an entrepreneur. I just listened to this podcast. I'm like, okay, I love it. I think this is a great opportunity. I think this fits, my niche of what I specialize in for, spin-off companies. What would be my next step?
Yeah, you should probably email me.
Okay.
So
and what's the best way to email you?
Yeah, so Dave_Brown@byu.edu.
Okay.
Or if you call the tech transfer number, that'd be fine. Or however you reach our office, people will get you the right place. Yeah. But we are actively looking for the right entrepreneur for it. So it would be a good time to reach out.
Fantastic. Great. Okay, and then once I license the technology, it's really in my court then, right, of what I want to do with it. But I think we've laid out several ways that you could use the technology immediately, as well as some plans for maybe some improvements long-term of where it could go.
Yeah, and I should mention also, a lot of people hearing this don't want to be entrepreneurs. They don't want to start a company. They're end users. They're an arena owner or manager, and they want to know when can I use the product. People like that also reach out to me. Just let me know what your level of interest is, and I'll keep a list. And once we have the startup up in hopefully a month or two, then I'll give them that list, and you can be among their first customers.
Great. So even if I just want to use it, right, reach out so that we can get in contact and be on that short list.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. Well, anything else that you wanted to talk about with the technology? Anything else that we need to review?
No, I'll just say a lot of people ask me, what do you have in software that's super market ready? What do you have in artificial intelligence? Because we know that's a good place to raise money right now. This is it. So if you're interested in those things, we just served one up to you.
Okay. And we didn't talk about it much, but like truly that AI buzz has never been higher than it is right now.
Right. And I heard someone say the other day that, in pop culture, maybe AI buzz is starting to dip a little bit, but not in fundraising.
Right.
Like it is still a great place to raise funds as a business.
Okay. Fantastic. Okay. Well, thank you for coming in, telling us more about the technology, and I'm sure we'll be back soon with another episode.
Great. Thanks, Bennett.